Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to constantly explain yourself? You explain why you made a certain decision, why you didn't answer someone's message, why you're changing careers, why you ended a relationship, why you're setting boundaries, why you're choosing a different path from everyone else. At first, it seems harmless. You tell yourself you're simply helping others understand. But if you look closely, something deeper is happening. Little by little, you begin living as though your choices require permission. You start measuring your life by other people's approval instead of your own principles. And without realizing it, you surrender one of the most valuable things you possess, your inner freedom. The Stoics understood this danger long before social media, public opinion, and constant digital validation existed. They knew that the moment your peace depends on everyone understanding you, your peace is no longer yours. It belongs to the crowd. Think about that for a moment. How many hours have you spent rehearsing explanations in your mind? How many sleepless nights have been consumed by imaginary conversations? You replay arguments that already ended. You prepare defenses for criticism that may never come. You search for the perfect words that will finally make everyone agree with you. But what if the problem isn't that people don't understand you? What if the problem is believing they must? This is where Stoicism begins. Not by teaching you to become cold, not by encouraging arrogance, but by helping you separate what is essential from what is unnecessary. And one of the most unnecessary burdens you can carry is the endless need to justify your life. Imagine a mountain standing silently beneath the sky. The wind strikes it. Rain falls upon it. People climb it. Some admire it. Others ignore it completely. Yet the mountain never explains why it stands where it does. It simply fulfills its nature. The Stoics believe that a person of strong character should be much the same, not stubborn, not indifferent, simply rooted in principles rather than public opinion. Unfortunately, most of us are taught the opposite. From childhood, we're rewarded for fitting in. We're encouraged to seek approval, to avoid disappointing others, to explain every decision that doesn't match expectations. Over time, we begin believing that disagreement is failure, that if someone misunderstands us, we have done something wrong. So we explain, then explain again and again, hoping that one more conversation will finally bring acceptance. But acceptance built on endless explanation is fragile, because no explanation satisfies someone who has already decided not to understand you. Marcus Aurelius encountered this reality almost every day. As Emperor of Rome, every decision he made attracted criticism. Some believed he was too gentle. Others believed he was too strict. Some questioned his priorities. Others doubted his leadership entirely. Imagine trying to satisfy millions of opinions. It would be impossible. Marcus understood something most people never learn. He could spend his life defending every choice. Or he could spend his life making wise choices. He chose the second. That decision gave him something far more valuable than universal approval. It gave him peace. Now ask yourself, how often do you explain your decisions because they're genuinely unclear? And how often do you explain them because you're uncomfortable with someone else's disapproval? There's an important difference. One comes from communication. The other comes from insecurity. The Stoics encourage honest communication, but they warn against becoming emotionally dependent on being understood, because the truth is simple. Not everyone wants understanding. Some people want agreement. Others want control. Some ask questions not because they're curious, but because they're searching for weaknesses. Imagine carrying a beautiful glass vase through a crowded marketplace. Every person you meet asks to hold it. Would you hand it to everyone? Of course not. You understand that something valuable deserves protection. Your inner peace deserves the same wisdom. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your thoughts. Not every opinion deserves an explanation. Not every criticism deserves a response. Learning the difference is one of the greatest signs of maturity. Epictetus understood this deeply. Born into slavery, he experienced a life where many judged him before hearing a single word. People looked at his circumstances and formed conclusions. Had he spent every day trying to convince others of his worth, he would have remained emotionally imprisoned. Instead, he focused on something entirely different: his character. He believed that if your actions consistently reflect your values, Explanations eventually become unnecessary. Think about someone you deeply respect. Perhaps they're calm under pressure, reliable, honest, disciplined. Do they constantly announce these qualities? Probably not. You recognize them through consistent behavior. Character introduces itself long before words ever can. Yet today, many people attempt the opposite. They explain who they are before they've lived it. They announce confidence instead of building it. They defend integrity instead of practicing it. They describe discipline instead of demonstrating it. The Stoics believed actions possess a quiet authority that explanations can never match. Imagine watching two trees grow. One constantly announces how strong it will become. The other simply grows deeper roots. Years later, when storms arrive, only one remains standing. Strength never needed an announcement. It needed development. The same is true for you. The strongest argument for your character is your life itself, not your speeches, not your justifications, not your social media posts, your actions. This realization becomes incredibly freeing because suddenly you no longer feel responsible for managing everyone's perception of you. Think about how much energy that saves. Instead of worrying about whether people misunderstand your silence, you use that energy to improve yourself. Instead of defending every decision, you focus on making better decisions. Instead of chasing approval, you pursue excellence. The Stoics saw excellence as something deeply personal, not because it impressed others, because it aligned with virtue. Imagine an archer aiming at a target. The archer controls preparation, practice, focus, technique. But once the arrow leaves the bow, the wind may change. The target may move. Unexpected circumstances may interfere. The Stoics would say the same about your reputation. You control your intentions. You control your actions. You do not control how everyone interprets them. Try and control both is a recipe for endless frustration. And yet, this is exactly what so many people attempt every day. Someone misunderstands your motives. You panic. Someone disagrees with your decision. You begin crafting a long explanation. Someone questions your boundaries. You feel guilty for protecting your peace. Eventually, you become so busy managing perceptions that you stop living authentically. Your life becomes a performance. The audience changes. The performance changes. But the exhaustion remains. Seneca warned about this kind of life. He observed that the greatest slavery often exists inside the mind, not chains around your wrists, chains around your need for approval. Imagine carrying invisible strings attached to everyone around you. Every compliment lifts your mood. Every criticism ruins your day. Every disagreement creates anxiety. Who's controlling your emotions? You are, but only because you've handed them the strings. The Stoics quietly cut those strings, not by becoming insensitive, by remembering that another person's opinion cannot determine your worth. Only your character can. There's another reason people explain themselves so often. Fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of judgment. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of losing relationships. These fears are understandable. Human beings naturally desire connection. The Stoics never denied that. But they also recognize that authentic relationships cannot exist if they're maintained by pretending to be someone you're not. Imagine building a house on sand. It may appear beautiful from the outside, but every storm threatens its foundation. A relationship built on constant self-justification works the same way. It survives only as long as you're willing to keep proving yourself. Eventually, that becomes exhausting. Real trust doesn't require endless defense. It grows through consistency. When people truly know your character, they don't need explanations for every decision you make. They may not always agree, but they understand your values. And if someone refuses to understand you no matter how honestly you communicate, no amount of explaining will change that. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. Some minds are already closed before the conversation begins. The Stoics believed wisdom included recognizing when silence accomplishes more than another argument. Silence isn't surrender. Sometimes silence is confidence. Imagine standing before a mirror. Do you argue with your reflection? No, you simply recognize what is. Some conversations deserve the same response. Not every accusation requires defense. Not every misunderstanding requires correction. Sometimes your greatest strength lies in walking away without needing the final word. That kind of restraint confuses people because they expect emotional reactions. They expect long explanations. They expect you to fight for their approval. Instead, you remain calm, you remain respectful, and you continue living according to your principles. This is not weakness. It is discipline, and discipline often appears invisible until life begins testing it. Every day presents opportunities to practice. Someone questions your goals. Do you become defensive, or do you quietly continue your work? Someone misunderstands your intentions. Do you spend hours convincing them, or do you allow your actions to speak over time? Someone criticizes your choices. Do you seek validation, or do you return your attention to what you can actually control? These moments seem small, but they shape your entire life. Because every unnecessary explanation slowly teaches your mind that your worth depends on someone else's acceptance. The Stoics rejected that belief completely. They believe your worth comes from living with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control, not from applause, not from popularity, not from universal agreement. As long as your conscience remains clear, you have already won the most important battle. Why the Stoics refuse to seek validation. Imagine carrying a mirror everywhere you go. Every few minutes, you stop to check your reflection, not because your appearance has changed, but because you're afraid someone else may see you differently. Eventually, you stop living your life. You spend all your time checking the mirror. Many people do the same thing emotionally. Instead of asking, "Am I living according to my values?" they constantly ask, "What do other people think of me?" They adjust their decisions. They soften their opinions. They explain every choice. They apologize for things that require no apology, all because they fear losing approval. The Stoics believe this was one of the greatest obstacles to inner peace, because the moment your happiness depends on being accepted by everyone, you place your emotional well-being in the hands of people you cannot control. Think about how dangerous that is. Your confidence rises when someone praises you. It falls when someone criticizes you. One compliment makes your day. One harsh comment ruins your week. Without realizing it, you've handed strangers the keys to your emotional life. The Stoics chose a different path. They believe that your self-respect should come from your character, not from public opinion. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this constantly. Despite being one of the most powerful men in the world, he knew people would misunderstand him. Some would question his motives. Others would criticize his decisions. A few would even hate him for doing what he believed was right. Did he spend his days trying to convince everyone? No, because he understood something that remains true today. People often judge you through the lens of their own experiences, not yours. Someone who is insecure may see confidence as arrogance. Someone who fears change may see courage as recklessness. Someone who values comfort above all else may see discipline as unnecessary. If you spend your life trying to correct every misunderstanding, you'll never have time to build a life you actually want. Imagine the sun rising each morning. Does it stop to explain why it shines? Does it apologize to those who prefer darkness? Does it ask for permission before appearing? Of course not. It simply fulfills its purpose. The Stoics believe your life should reflect the same quiet certainty. Not loud, not arrogant, simply consistent. One of the greatest misconceptions about confidence is that confident people always have the perfect answer. In reality, truly confident people often feel no need to answer at all, because they understand that silence can communicate strength more effectively than endless explanations. Think about someone who constantly argues online. Every criticism receives a response. Every disagreement becomes a debate. Every misunderstanding turns into a lengthy defense. Who appears more secure? The person who desperately needs to be right, or the person who calmly continues living according to their principles? The answer is obvious, yet many of us still fall into the trap. Why? Because validation feels rewarding. Every compliment gives us a small emotional boost. Every approval makes us feel accepted. There's nothing wrong with appreciating encouragement. The problem begins when encouragement becomes a necessity rather than a bonus. Imagine trying to fill a bucket with water, but the bucket has a hole in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour in, it never stays full. Seeking validation works the same way. One compliment feels wonderful for a moment, then the feeling fades. Soon you need another, and another. Eventually, you become emotionally dependent on other people's opinions. The Stoics warn that this kind of dependence quietly steals your freedom, because your emotions begin following the crowd instead of your conscience. Epictetus offered a powerful reminder. He believed that if you wish to improve, you must be willing to appear foolish in the eyes of others. Think about that. Every person who has ever done something extraordinary has faced misunderstanding. Inventors, artists, entrepreneurs, leaders, philosophers. At some point, someone questioned them. Someone laughed. Someone doubted them. Imagine if they had stopped every time criticism appeared. History would look very different. The Stoics understood that criticism is often the price of living authentically. If you never disappoint anyone, you may be disappointing yourself. That doesn't mean becoming rude or selfish. It means recognizing that pleasing everyone is impossible. Picture a traveler standing at a crossroads. One path leads toward their purpose. The other leads toward constant approval. The two roads rarely remain together for long. Eventually, a choice must be made. Many people choose approval because it feels safer. But safety often comes at the cost of authenticity. The Stoics believed authenticity was worth that risk, because living according to your values creates a peace that popularity never can. There is another subtle danger in constantly explaining yourself. It teaches people that your boundaries are negotiable. Imagine saying, "I won't be available this weekend." Instead of accepting your answer, someone keeps asking why. So you explain, then they question your explanation. You explain again. Soon you're defending a decision that never required permission. Sound familiar? Many people mistake explanations for kindness. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they quietly invite others to believe they have authority over your choices. A simple, "that doesn't work for me," is often enough. The Stoics admired clarity, not unnecessary complexity. A boundary doesn't become stronger because it includes a 5-minute speech. It becomes stronger because you consistently honor it. Consistency earns respect. Over-explaining often weakens it. Think about a judge delivering a verdict. After careful consideration, the decision is announced. The judge doesn't spend hours begging everyone to agree. The decision has already been made. Now compare that with someone who changes their answer every time another opinion appears. Which person inspires greater confidence? The one rooted in principle. Not because they're inflexible, because they're thoughtful before they decide. Once wisdom has spoken, there's no need to keep defending it. Seneca believed that time was one of life's greatest treasures. Yet how much time do people lose trying to change opinions that were never going to change? Hours, days, sometimes years. Imagine spending all afternoon arguing with someone determined to misunderstand you. At the end of the conversation, has either person truly grown? Usually not. Meanwhile, those hours could have been invested in learning, creating, resting, helping someone who genuinely wanted guidance. The Stoics treated attention like gold. They spent it carefully. Not every conversation deserved it. Not every argument earned it. One of the hardest lessons in life is realizing that some people ask questions not because they seek truth, but because they seek conflict. The Stoics learned to recognize the difference. If someone sincerely wanted understanding, they welcomed the conversation. If someone only wanted an argument, they quietly stepped away. Silence isn't losing. Sometimes silence is refusing to waste your energy. Imagine throwing a stone into muddy water. The harder you stir it, the cloudier it becomes. Leave it alone, and eventually the water clears by itself. Many arguments work exactly the same way. Your silence often ends them faster than your explanations ever could. This doesn't mean avoiding every difficult conversation. Stoicism is not about escaping conflict. It's about choosing meaningful conflict over meaningless conflict. Stand up for justice. Protect those who need protection. Speak the truth when it matters. But don't fight battles whose only prize is someone else's approval, because that prize disappears almost as quickly as it's won. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on how temporary human opinions really are. Today's critics become tomorrow's strangers. Today's applause fades. Today's trends disappear. Even the people who admire you today may forget you years from now. So why build your identity upon something so temporary? Instead, build it upon virtue, upon honesty, upon discipline, upon courage. Those qualities remain valuable even when nobody notices. Imagine planting an oak tree. For years, almost nothing appears above the ground. Yet beneath the surface, the roots continue growing. Patiently, silently, without applause, character develops the same way. Most of the work happens where nobody can see it. The world celebrates visible success. The Stoics admired invisible discipline, the decision not to argue, the courage to remain misunderstood, the strength to keep your promises when nobody is watching, the wisdom to let your life become your explanation. That is the kind of confidence no criticism can take away. By now, you may be realizing something important. The less you depend on other people's approval, the more peaceful your life becomes. Not because criticism disappears, but because criticism no longer controls you. You stop asking, how can I make everyone understand me? And you begin asking, am I living in a way that I understand and respect? That question changes everything, because it shifts your attention from appearances to principles, from performance to character, from pleasing others to becoming someone you genuinely admire. And that is where true Stoic confidence begins. Let your life be your explanation. Imagine meeting someone who never boasts about their achievements. They don't interrupt conversations to prove they're right. They don't rush to defend every decision they make. They don't seem concerned with convincing anyone that they're intelligent, successful, or worthy of respect. Yet, somehow, people naturally respect them. Why? Because there's a quiet confidence that cannot be faked. It doesn't come from clever words. It comes from a life lived with consistency. This was one of the greatest lessons of Stoicism. The Stoics believed your life should become your argument. Your actions should become your explanation. Your character should speak so clearly that your words become secondary. Think about the people you admire most. Perhaps it's someone known for honesty. When they make a promise, you believe them, not because they give long speeches about integrity, because they've proven it over time. Or maybe it's someone who remains calm during a crisis. They don't announce how emotionally strong they are. They simply demonstrate it when everyone else loses control. That's how trust is built, not through explanation, through repetition. The world is full of people trying to manage their image. The Stoics focused on managing their character. And there's an enormous difference. An image depends on other people's opinions. Character depends on your daily choices. One is fragile. The other becomes stronger with every challenge. Imagine an artist creating a masterpiece. Would they stop every few minutes to explain why they're choosing a certain color? Would they pause after every brushstroke to ask if everyone approves? Of course not. They remain focused on the work. Your life deserves the same attention. Too many people interrupt their own progress because they're constantly checking the audience. Do they understand me? Do they approve? Should I explain myself again? Meanwhile, the work remains unfinished. The Stoics would gently remind you, stop explaining the painting. Finish it. Your success will answer questions that your words never could. Your consistency will silence doubts that arguments never will. Your peace will speak louder than your defense. Marcus Aurelius understood that leadership was not about winning every debate. It was about setting an example. Imagine trying to light a dark room. Do you spend hours arguing about the value of light? Or do you simply light the candle? The moment the flame appears, the argument becomes unnecessary. This is exactly how wisdom works. Live honestly. People notice. Live with discipline. People notice. Treat others with respect. People notice. Remain calm under pressure. People notice. And if they don't, keep living that way anyway. Because virtue isn't valuable only when it's recognized. It's valuable because it shapes the person you become. One of the most liberating realizations in Stoicism is this. Not everyone is meant to understand your journey. Think about a seed planted beneath the soil. From the surface, nothing seems to be happening. Someone looking at the ground might assume nothing is growing. Yet beneath the earth, roots are spreading. Life is developing. Growth is taking place in silence. Your own growth often looks the same. When you choose discipline over distraction, others may not understand. When you choose peace instead of revenge, others may call you weak. When you refuse to join gossip, others may think you're distant. When you set healthy boundaries, others may accuse you of changing. But remember this: growth often looks strange to people who have chosen not to grow. The Stoics accepted this without bitterness. They understood that being misunderstood is sometimes the price of becoming the person you're meant to be. Another reason we overexplain is that we fear losing people. We think, if I can just make them understand, they'll stay. But here's a difficult truth. The right people rarely require endless explanations. Healthy relationships are built on trust, not interrogation. Imagine having a friend who questions every decision you make. Why did you take that job? Why are you leaving early? Why don't you answer faster? Why did you say no? Eventually, you stop feeling respected. You begin feeling managed. Now imagine someone different. They ask thoughtful questions. They listen. They trust your judgment. Even when they disagree, they respect your right to choose. Which relationship feels healthier? The answer is obvious. Trust leaves room for individuality. Control demands constant justification. The Stoics encourage us to build relationships rooted in mutual respect, not endless approval. Epictetus believed that every person plays a role in life. Some are parents, some are teachers, some are leaders, some are students. But beneath every role lies one greater responsibility: to become a person of virtue. If you're fulfilling that responsibility honestly, you don't need to spend your life defending yourself. Your conscience becomes your greatest witness. Ask yourself something important. When you're alone, without applause, without criticism, without social media, without comparison, are you proud of the person you're becoming? If the answer is yes, then you're already succeeding in the way that matters most. If the answer is no, no amount of explanation will fix it. Only action will. This is why the Stoics valued self-reflection more than self-promotion. Every evening, they examined themselves, not to impress others, to improve themselves. Imagine ending each day with 3 questions. Did I act according to my values? Did I allow fear of judgment to influence my decisions? Did my actions match the person I want to become? Notice something. None of those questions depend on other people's opinions, because your greatest judge should always be your own conscience. And when your conscience is clear, criticism loses much of its power. This doesn't mean you'll never feel hurt. You're human. Words can sting. Misunderstandings can disappoint you. Rejection can be painful. The Stoics never denied that. They simply refused to let temporary emotions dictate permanent choices. Imagine an experienced sailor crossing the ocean. The wind changes direction. The waves become rough. Dark clouds gather overhead. Does a sailor panic every time conditions change? No, because the destination remains the same. Your values should work like that destination. Opinions will change. Circumstances will change. People will come and go. But your principles remain steady. And when your principles remain steady, your need to explain yourself begins to disappear. Because certainty replaces insecurity. Purpose replaces performance. Character replaces image. There's another beautiful lesson hidden within Stoicism. Silence creates space. Space to think. Space to observe. Space to grow. Many people speak because they're uncomfortable with silence. The Stoics became comfortable inside it. Imagine sitting beside a quiet lake at sunrise. The surface is still. Because it's still, it reflects the sky perfectly. Your mind behaves the same way. The quieter it becomes, the more clearly it sees reality. Constantly defending yourself creates noise. Silence creates clarity. And clarity leads to wiser decisions. This doesn't mean never speaking. It means speaking when your words improve the situation. If your explanation brings understanding, speak. If your words protect someone from harm, speak. If truth requires courage, speak. But if you're speaking only because you fear being misunderstood, pause. Ask yourself, am I seeking understanding or approval? That one question can save you from countless unnecessary conversations. Remember, even the greatest Stoics face criticism. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and still had detractors. Seneca was admired by many and criticized by many more. Epictetus taught wisdom, yet not everyone accepted his teachings. If these remarkable minds could not satisfy everyone, neither can you, and that's perfectly okay. Because your purpose is not to become universally accepted. Your purpose is to become universally honest with yourself. There will always be people who misunderstand your silence. Let them. There will always be people who question your boundaries. Let them. There will always be people who create stories about your choices. Let them. Their opinions belong to them. Your character belongs to you. Protect it carefully. Because once you stop chasing approval, something remarkable happens. You begin living with greater freedom. You make decisions based on wisdom rather than fear. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces you've already outgrown. You stop apologizing for becoming healthier, calmer, and more disciplined. You realize that every minute spent proving yourself is a minute not spent improving yourself. And improvement will always serve you better than explanation. So the next time someone demands that you justify every choice you make, remember the quiet wisdom of the Stoics. You don't have to win every argument. You don't have to answer every accusation. You don't have to correct every misunderstanding. Sometimes the most powerful response is to keep living according to your values, because in the end, your life will always speak louder than your words. And those who are truly willing to understand you won't need endless explanations. They'll simply watch how you live. Final reflection as you go through the coming week. Challenge yourself with one simple practice. The next time you feel the urge to over-explain a decision that aligns with your values, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, am I explaining this to create understanding, or because I'm afraid of disapproval? If it's fear speaking, let your actions do the talking instead. Remember this timeless Stoic truth. You don't owe the world a constant explanation. You owe yourself a life lived with integrity. When your character becomes your message, your peace no longer depends on being understood. And that is one of the greatest forms of freedom anyone can achieve. If this message resonated with you, leave a comment with the word Stoic to show your commitment to living with greater confidence and less need for validation. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more timeless lessons from Stoic philosophy that can help you build a calmer mind, stronger character, and a more meaningful life. Until next time, remember, let your actions speak so clearly that your explanations become unnecessary.